Well, welcome to the Mindcraft podcast. My name is Kimberly Quinn, and I am here again with the amazing Jim Stutz for episode 2 of I think it's a 3 or 4 part series that's all about authenticity and connection. And Jim is a retired middle school teacher, which in and of itself hasn't been amazing, right? And now Jim is going to speak to us on happiness, longevity, and the importance of relationships and kind of the cost benefits situation, right? I think, Jim. So
Yes.
kick us off. Let's get us going.
Okay. So the unifying theme in this series we're doing is based on a book written by a hospice nurse by the name of Bronne Ware, who over her years of working with hospice patients, preparing them to die, spoke with them about their lives, and among the things they talked about were their regrets. And she started to notice certain regrets consistently appearing in people's conversations, and 5 in particular that she highlights in her book. And so today we're talking about one of those 5, which is people regret that they did not stay in touch with their friends as they're nearing the end of their lives. And so we want to explore today, what is the cost of that? And on the flip side, for those people who do engage in that and make it a priority, what is the benefit of staying in those relationships and doing the work it takes to nurture them?
No, that is fantastic because I like the message here, Jim. When I first read Jim is an excellent writer and does some beautiful work with short essays that grab you from the second. So when I was reading this earlier, that's what captured me, is this whole idea of get the message before it's too late.
Yes, yeah.
Right?
I've always been big on that. I think you mentioned as a writer, one of the things I love to do is to learn the moral of a story and be able to, as a teacher,
Right.
instruct my students in that as we read a novel or something, let's say. And, history and literature and art, film, music are filled with tons of examples of this particular lesson of not neglecting important relationships until it's too late. And so, yeah, I've always tried through that for myself to learn the lessons that have come before us so that I don't have to repeat those mistakes.
And you go through the pain of learning
Right,
those
yes.
mistakes. I mean, there's the easy way, get the message from a podcast.
Right,
Or there's the hard way, you're on your deathbed after maybe like a long, the sun a little bit. You've lived, let's say a healthy 80 years, and you've lost track of people, and then having this big aha moment when you've got not long left. I don't know. I think I'd choose podcast.
yes, podcasts, anything you can. I mean, these, like I said, this has been the subject of literature for hundreds of years, if not more, and other art forms as well. I mean, and that's oftentimes the whole function of a piece of art is to impart some valuable lesson to us so that we don't have to go through the pain, as you said, that we've just seen played out on the pages of a novel or on a stage.
And there are so many stories of this, Jim. I even remember one, the classic. It was a student I had years, and probably more than a decade ago. Her father, pretty young, to have a massive heart attack.
Hmm.
I think she was 20, so he was like maybe 50, maybe.
Yeah.
And he survived it, but by this much. But man, did it turn his life around. But why? Like you brought up earlier, this is how far back this goes, and even farther than Charles Dickens. But you were talking about A Christmas Carol earlier.
Yeah.
Think about the theme of that.
Yeah. I think most people, maybe they know it better just by the word Scrooge, the main character, he is the main character, Ebenezer Scrooge. And the whole purpose of that story is to follow his journey
Right.
from what he was like as a younger person, which was a kinder, warmer man. He had, relationship with his sister, and he had that human side to his life.
Right, right,
But
right.
along the way, he got sidetracked by his desire for achieving wealth and status, societal status, and he lost his humanity, and he treated the people around him poorly. And the whole story is about his rediscovering the futility of all that other stuff without having love in one's life, and
Powerful.
his transformation.
And thankfully, I mean, he was at the end, but thankfully, he at least hit a little bit about it. That just had me thinking of a newer version, not exactly the same, but the movie Wall Street. Did you see that?
Oh yeah, oh sure.
Charlie Sheen is kind of has a sort of similar.
Mm-hmm.
He left his, kind of blue collar, wholesome existence. Where his dad was more blue collar, wholesome existence,
Right.
and then he circles all the way back when his dad, who was, laboring, was like, "Here's what you really need."
Right. Yeah. And that lesson in real life and in art is there for us in so many places, but for some reason we keep thinking the answer is to get rich and famous. And we keep abandoning what we know really matters, or many people do. And sometimes they learn that lesson before it's too late, and sometimes they don't.
It's so tragic. Oh my God, it's so tragic. It's like that whole, the cliche, you can't take it with you.
Of course, yeah.
Chasing that carrot. I'm not saying it's not nice to be financially comfortable, right? But it's not just about the money. What if we? I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on this, Jim, because a lot of times it is money, and titles and business cards and all that goes together. But we're distracted also, I think, now by social media and spending hours and hours and hours. And that seems like that can also almost be or not almost, is an illusion of connection. Now, what do you think, or if anything, how do you think, if it does, affect what we're talking about is pulling people away from the genuine, authentic human closeness?
I think you're right on target with that. And that's been trending in our society even before social media came along. There's just been a trend for the last probably 3 decades or so of people not participating in social things like they used to. I remember hearing about a book probably at least 20 years ago called Bowling Alone. And it was about this topic. It was a study of, people, my mom was one of these people, used to join, bowling leagues, and
Right,
they
right.
had adult softball leagues, or whatever it was. They had social occasions that people routinely wove into their lives, usually unified by some sort of common interest. And over these last few decades, people have participated in those less and less and less, and become more and more isolated in their homes. And technology has aided that. And then social media came along and, like you said, created an illusion of connection. And I think a lot of people, just like pursuing wealth and fame, they got obsessed with, how many likes or followers they were getting, and that gave them some sort of false sense of validation. But just like all those other things, that wears off fairly quickly, and you're left again with this sort of feeling of emptiness. Whereas even just having one real connection that you spend time with, if possible, if you live close enough to actually spend time together, or if not, people used to phone call each other on a regular basis and just have an
Oh,
hour,
that,
have a weekly chat with somebody that didn't
right.
live close by. So yeah, I think we've sacrificed genuine connection, either in person or over a phone or something like that, or like this now. Technology has made this possible
Right.
to see each other. And I think we've lost track of the power of those things.
Oh, I 100% agree. I'll even tell you, it's sort of humorous, but it's sort of not humorous. I forgot about the sun issue here at this time of year. Because I actually said to someone once, and he got mad at me. He was talking about video games which are totally a black hole as far as going down,
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're always bad or anything like that, but they can be a black hole, let's just put it that way. And he was an adult, and I was kind of just saying it in jest, but he got mad at me because he was talking about it was a World of Warcraft where you lead the platoon thing across like this whole scenario story, and he kept saying friends because it was the same people across the world. He never actually met them, but they're doing this group, surge or whatever. And I said jokingly, I said, well, what happens if the power goes out? There goes your friends. And he was mad at me. Okay. Put that, and maybe I was a little spicy there, but the thing is, those aren't, think of the definition of friend.
Right. Yeah. For some reason, as you were
How do you
talking,
define friend?
right. As you were talking, for some reason, I'm thinking about, if you were on a video game or some sort of virtual platform collecting food, in an electronic form, and it's not the same as actually ingesting real food without nourishes one's body.
Right.
It's some sort of weird substitute for that, but it doesn't ultimately serve the same purpose.
It's electrons, Jim. That's right. Like I've told my students that's not a friend. That's electrons buzzing through that's.
Yeah, a friend is somebody that can be there for you. We all know this on some level, Again, even if they're not physically able to be with you, you can pick up a phone. They're there for you. They listen to you. They provide whatever it is you need, and you do the same for them. Emotional support, moral support, humor, joy, love, compassion, in a real way, with their own voice, which is a whole different thing from a text or an email.
And eye contact.
Yeah.
Maybe some touching, hugging,
Yeah.
or, are you okay? All that.
Very powerful. All those things are, human connection that we all need. And that if you're isolated in your home, just watching TV or playing video games or doing social media or whatever, and you don't have any of that, the genuine, authentic, human-to-human contact, it takes a toll.
It really does. And I actually just did a reel on it recently, not nearly as in depth as this, obviously, 90 seconds, but how sometimes it's mostly the generation, but I don't think it's all the younger generation that, especially after the pandemic, that played a role too, I think. Well, I'm introverted or I'm extroverted or anywhere in between. No matter how introverted somebody may be, right, we all need some level of human connection. Now, somebody like myself is super extroverted. I get people fixes wherever I go. But even we extroverts, I was just talking to you about when I've been traveling a lot lately, missing my woods time. We all need some, and to discount that, I think, is harmful.
It's very harmful, and I think people under a certain age, maybe it's as high as 40 now, may not have ever really known anything else because they've grown up and all of this technology already existed.
Right.
It was part of their lives from the get-go,
Right.
and so they don't even know what they're missing, but there's something missing inside. We know that the current younger generation is loaded with anxiety and worries of all kinds that I think are alleviated in those of us. We may share the same worries, but those are tempered by genuine connection with other people.
Right, 100% right. And I know that for sure for my students, Jim, you're saying exactly what they tell me. And they've got all kinds of fear around social, not even saying diagnosed social, but they're very fearful about it too.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of afraid of what we need human connection like we breathe oxygen.
Yeah.
right? And so they're not getting it. They're not getting it because there's so much anxiety and fear around how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's all the distractions we just talked about. So you were saying like that the price of loneliness is huge, right? Because it's linked to depression. It just goes down a spiral. So we know that the cost of not having this connection is huge, right?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
then I was reading again. Jim's essays are fantastic. So I'll put these in the blurb. Not all the essays, but how to reach him, just in case you want to reach out about that, because they're really good. And I like that they're like kind of like a short little something, where it's, because books are good. I like to read everything, voraciously, but essays are such a breath of fresh air, and he's got some really good ones. I just wanted to plug that right there.
Thank you.
So in one of them, the one I was just reading, Jim touches on it's called the Moai. Is that correct?
Yes, these are friendship groups in Okinawa, Japan, and they go back a long, long time, but they've evolved to be small groups of friends that are often formed even in childhood by their communities. Just become woven into their culture. And so from childhood, they, sort of put together a group of 5 or 6 young people, and they are taught about how to support one another, to provide, again, moral support, friendship, love, sometimes when they need it, especially as they get into adulthood, maybe financial support, when something's going wrong in someone's life, somebody's spouse passes, or they're going through some rocky travail. They're there for one another, and this is like an unshakable, unbreakable bond that they develop. And one of the people in the group said, something to the effect that life is a lot easier when you know there's a safety net. And I think that's what, in our culture we miss so much, is we're such a you're on your own, rugged individualist kind of a mindset, that, to shift over to something that's such a different culture, like that one in Okinawa. When you read up on it a little bit, or there is a documentary about it on Netflix called The Blue Zones, or I think the documentary might be called Live to 100. But Okinawa is one of these blue zones that is a place around the world. There's like 5 of them, where people live very long lives, but also very high quality lives. And these moai are how they do it in Okinawa. And people routinely live into their 90s and 100s, and they're vital. They're not just sitting around in a nursing home. They're actually still living life and supporting one another. And they've been doing this for each other since they were children. And, to imagine the rich benefits of having that kind of safety net or support group around you throughout your life is immeasurable.
It is immeasurable, because there's so many studies. And when I used to teach that in my Minecraft course, I used to show some videos, like little short things, and the kids were all their kids. The students were, saying "oh," because they were little clips of centenarians going to lunch with each other, and there was one man who was volunteering. I believe it was MIT. Maybe they paid him. It's not even important. The fact is, he was engaged with other people, and he was a chemist. And 101, I think he was. And then, like, his little package arrived with his things, and he said, "Oh, good, it's here." And he was so actively engaged with other people and using his mind. And then it showed another one where I think there were 4 women, and the woman driving can hardly see over the steering wheel. But she pulled up to gather her friends, and off they went for lunch. And I don't think, and yes, they were adorable, but I don't think people understand that this is the gold and the diamonds of life right here.
Yeah, it is. And that's awesome that, the people you're talking about are maintaining those connections at such an advanced age. And I think the lesson for us is, what are we waiting for if we're not
Yes.
doing it already? You
Yes.
know, and is again goes back to, are we learning the lessons that are all around us, whether it's in the story Christmas Carol or any other
Right, right, right.
real, non-fictional or fictional source. We know that human contact and healthy relationships, whether that's with a family member or a friend, is doesn't matter. Um, these pay such deep, deep benefits and rewards, and it's really something like we talked about the Moai in Okinawa. This starts, and these values are trained into them from the youngest of ages. And I think that's something we really need to take a look at, is why aren't we doing more of that if we're not already?
See, that's the big question, Jim, and I was thinking about it earlier when I was reading for your essay, because the message is really clear. Little children have it until something happens.
Yes.
They're
Yes.
they're present in the moment. They're grateful. They're engaged. They're valuing their little friends, and then something
Mm-hmm.
happens. So we know what to do. Why are so many people pulled away from, or let's say take ownership, right? So allowing ourselves to be pulled away from these things that are so temporary. I mean, why do you think that is?
I think in our culture, even, the technology, as we talked about, is being stuck into the faces of very young people. And so that's, as soon as you put a phone or a tablet in front of a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 6-year-old, they're no longer connected to another person
Right.
for as long as they're
That's a good point.
wrapped up in that device. And I think at younger and younger ages, people in our schools and, if they play club sports or any kind of sport or activity, um, the emphasis is no longer on enjoyment, or in very few places is it. The emphasis is on, work, 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 achieve, 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 achieve,
And win.
and practice, until you fall down because you can't do one more step. Um, as opposed to just, here's a ball, go have fun, and there's connection in that. But when we start drilling into people at a young age that, oh, now it's competition, you have to be better than the other person, you have to work harder, you have to or perform this person, then you dismantle all of that.
And be overscheduled. That was something for those of you who missed Jim's first episode of the series. You might want to go back and watch that, because they stand alone, but they're feeding each other. And Jim brought up in his first one last week about watching his nephews, just playing with no direction, right? And how we've
Yes.
lost that.
Yes. Yeah, I don't see, I look out my windows and I don't see groups of kids riding their bikes or playing ball in the street, or I don't see kids at all. And there's plenty of them on my street, but I don't know where they are because they're not out playing. So.
That's so sad to me, because at a Fabulous 59, I remember in a neighborhood in New York, we were talking about this a little bit last time. You knew where kids were by where the bikes were laying on the lawns. They were postage stamp
Right.
lawns. And our basset hound used to sit perched right where my sister and I were, and you'd pick up games and flashlight tag, and there were no phones, there were no video games. Obviously, you came in rosy cheeked from being outside.
Uh-huh.
It was just, and all the creativity.
Right. And you can just, those are the same kind of things we should do and just adjust them to our interests as we get older, what is going to be the version of flashlight tag when you're 20 and 30 and 40? Like, we shouldn't lose those things, because like I was saying, bowling leagues people used to play bowling leagues, or softball leagues or play cards. I remember my grandparents talking about having friends, they'd get together and play cards or go to people's houses for dinner. There was this social life outside of work that was prioritized at any age. And that's something
comfortable,
Mhm.
isn't it?
Yeah, I can remember my grandparents taking me along if I was visiting with them to their friends' houses and stuff, and there was always just this warm, comfortable, feeling in the room. They were laughing, sharing with each other, no TVs or anything. Of course, it was before there was cell phones and all of that, but yeah, there was genuine connection going on.
And there's nothing like it.
No,
It's
no.
food for the soul. I'll tell you, Jim and I were talking about, my husband and I were at a wedding over the weekend in New Hampshire, Lake Winnipesaukee, and we had, this was the son of very old, 3 decades of friendship with this family, and it's just nothing like just sitting there and drinking wine and tearing up the dance floor, making, just being goofy and silly, because no one cares.
Right.
And it's just I think the word is rejuvenating. That's the word that comes to me, because all of us were tired. People have different big jobs and different whatever, things going on in your life. And you can forget said hard thing for 24 or 48 hours and just immerse yourself in the dance floor with the food, with the funny, photo booth stuff and all the things, and play.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Rejuvenating is a good word for it. And you said it. It feeds the soul. And you may have been tired. You may have been tired because of your job and your other life responsibilities heading into that, but you come out of it re-energized, but also like refilled in your heart. In your being. Your being is full.
I felt so full, Jim. That's a good way to put it. I felt so full. And I know my 2 women friends. Well, the one I've had, we went to, my high school roommate is one of them, so we have even more history. I met the other friend through her, but it's still been since 1997. So, I mean, just full is the word. We threw off our shoes to dance because they were just all of it. Goofy, goofy, goofy.
Yeah.
And the thing is, even if it's not something serious, severe in your life, just the day-to-day drama and all the crap, you can forget it for a day and a half, or if it's even just a lunch or whatever. I think that we got to reel it in before it's too late, with being on the deathbed or a heart attack or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the whole thing. Before it's too late, and because none of us know, we're not guaranteed tomorrow, so we don't know when that's going to be for us or the people we keep meaning to contact, but we don't. We keep putting it off, and then something happens and all you're left with is regret, and there's nothing you can do about it anymore because the opportunity's gone.
Right. Forever.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's throw that in there. Forever. I think, Jim, you said something in your essay about everybody's favorite day of the week. Not everybody. Some people's favorite day of the week.
Yeah, someday.
Someday.
I'll get
And
to
that
it
led into
someday.
an old Harry Chapin song.
Yeah, that song, it was popular when I was younger. I don't know if younger audiences would know it, but they should. There's a musician named Harry Chapin who had a hit song called Cats in the Cradle. And this song came out in 1974. I was 6 years old. And even at that age, this song resonated with me because it reflected my own experiences, which was I had a stepfather by that point who just couldn't be bothered to make time for me. And I would see my other friends, out playing ball with their dads and wonder, like, how come mine won't play with me? And this song is all about a father who's just too wrapped up in himself and his career goals to make time for his kid. And as his son grows older, his son has learned those lessons from his dad, and by the time the tables turn and the dad's retired and wants to spend time with his son's too busy to have time for him. And so he realizes that he created this, situation where, his son has become just like he was, and it's very sad.
That is a super intense song, and especially
Yeah.
if I have another good friend who is actually pretty well known in the psychology world, so I'll just leave it out. But he has, if he were right here, he'd share it himself, truthfully. But he's come and spoken to my students, and he's spoken, and he's right out there with that. That was his experience with his dad too,
Hmm.
who died when he was 15, actually. So yeah, and it makes such a mark. And I think the main theme of that one, Jim, since we're talking about the regrets, is not only the regrets for the person who's tuned out and removed themselves from all the authentic connection, but they're actually teaching children, and then they'll be parents maybe someday, and where's that going?
Yeah, yeah, and it causes being neglected like that, whether it's by a father or a parent or a friend that just, you know, you keep calling them and they just, yeah, we'll get to it someday.
Someday.
And it's incredibly painful that they don't see, for whatever reason, they don't make the effort, and it does take effort. I have relatives that live within 15 minutes of me who I cannot get to come out for a drink or a coffee or something. And the only time I see them is every 5 years when our family has a reunion in North Dakota. I'm in Southern California. Then I'll see them. But they live 15 minutes away and they can't be bothered to, answer a call, get together. So I do not understand it, but
I think that was just a chuckle.
they're the ones that are gonna have to.
Right, a chuckle of surprise, Jim, because obviously that's not funny. It's horrible. I mean, people don't. This is not a dress rehearsal we're doing right now. This is the big game.
Yeah.
You know how I feel about it. My life minutes, very, very valuable. And it's also sad. And then you and I had also talked about, and you were so good to look at that not that long ago, about the famous longitudinal Harvard study. And of course, a longitudinal study is one of the most credible studies there are because, the torch has passed for so many years that it went through several different generations. And as you know, they found that the number one for longevity and happiness together, like a highest of quality and long existence, was the relationships and positive ones. I'm not saying perfect,
Yeah.
but positive,
Right.
because the toxic relationships do the opposite. And like you said earlier,
Oh, yes.
Jim, it doesn't. So our listeners, if they don't have a partner or whatever, it doesn't mean you have to have a partner. It means best. I have a best friend from 4 years old. Since I mean, talk about a diamond, and I've got two of those in addition to my husband because I've got my college roommate I was telling you about. But it doesn't mean you have to have a partner, right? It means people,
Right.
long term,
Yes.
in it to win it.
Yep. Yeah, and goes both ways. They're willing to invest the time and the effort to maintain that relationship, just as you are. And the benefits are there's just no better investment you can make.
No better investment, not a 401k. Like, that's good too, but no better investment. But I liked, lastly, Jim, how you commented on, because I do hear this a lot from the younger generation, though it's not solely the Gen Zs. And just by the way, I'm not judging Gen Zs. I love Gen Zs. I have two myself. Because when they were born, technology was already here, right?
Yeah.
But when you said the big E word of effort, I think oftentimes we think relationships should just be so natural that they just happen. And let's hear you talk about that, because as far as I know, in a marriage for 34 years, it takes effort. I'm not saying it has to be marriage.
Yeah.
Any best friendship, sibling, whatever.
Right. Yeah. No, I made a concerted effort and decision about 10 years ago realizing for myself more and more how valuable these kinds of good, positive relationships were. And so I made a decision to, quietly allow those friends and other relationships that were not so nurturing to sort of just drift away. Like I didn't have any dramatic breaks with anybody. I just stopped feeding them. And I made it, a concerted effort to reconnect with, if I hadn't been connected with, people that I really got warm feelings from when I spent time with them. And these were all friends. None of them were actual relatives or spouses or anything like that. And those people, because of that giving nature, were just as willing as I was to keep that going. So many times in life we maybe bump into somebody we haven't seen in a while. Maybe we went to school with them or something, and we go, "Hey, I'd love to catch up," and we trade information, and nobody ever calls. Neither one of us do. And I was determined not to let that happen anymore. And so I made a point of reaching out to them, and they responded in kind. And this has been going on for 10 years now, and there's a group of about 4 or 5 friends like that I have, that if it's been more than a few weeks, one of us will nudge the other one and say, "Hey, it's time to get together again." And we will. And they're all local, so if we say we're getting together for coffee, it's like a 4-hour outing, because it's just this. It's like just relating to each other, sharing what's going on in our lives, supporting one another, whether it's in something good or something challenging. And it's just made such an amazing difference in my life and hopefully in theirs as well. And it just fuels you on to want to keep putting in the effort because there's a return, I guess that's the difference, is with some of those other relationships, you put forth effort and there's not a return. And so those are the ones you just sort of quietly let go, and you put the effort into the ones that are filling you, and you're helping to fill others. And not coincidentally, I think when you do that, this has happened with me, people suddenly appear that you haven't had around for a while who do fit that bill. I've had that happen a couple of times when I was going through that process, where I'd be in a coffee shop somewhere and see somebody I hadn't seen for 10 years, but we really had a good connection, and we've stayed in touch ever since. So I don't think that's coincidental. I think when you're putting out that kind of energy, you're attracting those people back into your life as well.
Well, I'm totally a believer in the energetic thing. We attract people who are energetic matches, and it's like what you're saying, Jim. It's a mutual, you're being filled up, as you say, with joy and growth, and it might be a good thing, might be a not so good thing in your life, but either way, they're around for all of it. It's kind of, in a way, I don't think it sounds like it was from early on birth, like in Okinawa, but it sounds like you kind of created your own moai.
Yeah, now that you mentioned it, I hadn't thought of that, but you're right. Yes, very much so. Yeah, these are all people that I can reach out to, or they can reach out to me, no matter what.
And I liked how you brought up, I did a long time ago, did a thing on this too, is you created a life minute budget for yourself, which it doesn't mean that the people you kind of let fade away or cut loose, it doesn't mean that they were toxic or not good people or anything like that. It just means they're not doing it for you anymore. Maybe they found different interests that you grew apart, you're not in the same place, whatever. It doesn't mean anybody's bad. They might even feel the same way. But we only have so many life minutes in a day. And so I really like how you tapped into that, because we often feel obligated to keep every single connect, and no. Sift out and put your life minute energy into your most valuable people. I call my inner circle the cabinet, like the president. Like, that's who I bounce things, and they know who they are. My husband and kids, and then I've got my chosen family, and like rings on an onion. Or like or sports team, first, second, third string, or whatever. But I really liked how you touched on that because I think people stay, not even mean spouses and all that. I mean, people sometimes stay in relationships solely out of guilt for not doing so. That's no
Hmm.
good.
No, no,
It's a waste of life.
no.
I'm really glad you touched on
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
that.
yeah, I think we need
I'm
to.
listening.
Yeah. No, I think that same kind of sort of idea applies to all of the things that are the most important in our lives, whether it's our careers, our relationships, our health. Focus on the most important things, and because we're just inundated by too much of everything in our culture,
Too much
information,
of
maybe
everything.
more than anything else. And so you drive yourself crazy trying to keep up with all of it. So yeah, it's a matter of quality always.
That is a fantastic way to end up because, again, I like how you kind of opened the door for people to give themselves permission with that. Because I think a lot of people don't, not just the young ones. I think 40s, 50s, and up. I think those are golden words there, Jim, too. So
Thank you.
this all sounds fantastic. So our main theme here is to, we don't want to regret that in our last hour, right? Not keeping up with the connection. So how would you suggest people, let's say people have kind of been in that place, maybe how would you suggest people get back on board with it? One small step they could do.
The first thing that comes to mind is, think about, I think we probably all have that person that we enjoy, always have enjoyed spending time with or connecting with, that maybe we haven't done so in a while and they haven't done for us. And we think, I really would like to talk again to Steve or whatever. Give him a call and call him. Don't text him or email him. Call, and if they don't answer, leave a voicemail. I mean, hearing somebody's voice is so powerful. Um, it conveys feeling and your presence and your spirit. And just pick one person like that you haven't been in touch with them, they haven't been in touch with you, but you always liked spending time together. And you, for whatever reason, you guys got busy and you kind of lost touch. Pick one person and just call them.
I like that a lot. I like that a lot. And just kind of bite the bullet, take a deep breath, and call someone. And that's fantastic. Okay, so Jim's information will be right below in the blurb in case you'd like to reach out for talk about the essays, more conversation. You want to keep it going. You want to ask him a question. You might even have some resources. I don't know, but the information will be right below here. And so really that's just it. I'd like to say thank you, Jim, for being a part of the Mindcraft podcast once again. I look forward to what listeners have to say and listening to this again myself.
Thank you so much. As always, I'm just really privileged and honored to be invited to be here with you and your listeners, and I always appreciate the chance.